This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, it's Marty from the Accelerator team, and I'm here today with Joe Mclean. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Joe is multiple things. Tell us about yourself.
So I own a gym called Body Hacks Fitness, and I'm a personal trainer as well. Been a personal trainer over 10 years now, and I've had the gym for 4.5.
4.5 years, and in your spare time you punch people in the face and let people punch you in the face.
Yeah, more trying to avoid getting punched, but I
boxing we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm into me boxing, and I did for years play bits of football and that, but I'm not really getting the time for that at the minute. But
it's busy running a business, isn't it?
Well, I've got a fight team in the gym, so I've got no choice. I've kind of got a box.
Yeah.
Because then I just get stared at if I'm not sparring in the LR.
So we get to talk about there's a few little things, but first of all, the obvious comparisons between keeping yourself mentally fit, physically fit, and running a business. Can we talk about the fitness first, though? And I'm sure the similarities will come out as we talk.
Yeah.
So the way to keep yourself in good shape.
So I kind of look at it on a, yes, if you're physically fit, you're in a better environment mentally to then perform better in your job or in your business. But I always speak about discipline, and if you think about fitness, what we're essentially doing is creating struggle for ourselves. So where, however regularly you train, every time you go in that gym or every time you start that session, you're causing pain, it's uncomfortable, and you're putting your body into an uncomfortable situation, which I find that, like, in most cases, people want to find the easy route for things. Now, if you start finding the easy route for things, like, for example, in your training, if you know for a certain exercise, for example, you've got to do 4 sets of that, but then you only actually do 3, and you just think, I can just leave that last set. That opens up a pathway in your brain that's kind of telling yourself that it's all right.
You're letting yourself off.
Yeah. Now in business, if you do that, you at some point something's gonna,
it's going to give, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was trying relate, because I do train like a lot of business owners, and I try and relate it back to your training. Is that if you're struggling daily, the end result will be greater. So in business, you take risk. Now the risk in training is, mentally, you're thinking, God, this is going to hurt. I'm going to sweat here. It's going to be horrible. But if you push yourself through that, you get a greater reward at the end of it. Just like when you're taking risks in business, or when this is why you don't want to get up.
If you turn up every day in business and you do the thing you're good at and you're comfortable at, you won't take new opportunities, you won't stand on the stage and present that thing, you won't make that big pitch, you won't try that new service. Is that what you mean by create the struggle?
Yeah, so it's about pushing yourself outside of your norm. So it's easy to just, probably for yourself, you could easily just turn up to the office and do just the bare minimum of what you have to do for that day, go home, have your tea and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But you don't excel that way. That's not, I kind of always say that you make your own luck in business. Yeah. Is that if you're not pushing yourself, if you're not putting yourself out there and kind of trying to push the boat a little bit, which is a struggle. It's kind of, you're kind of exposing yourself when you do that. If you're not doing that, then you're not going to get anywhere. It's the same in training.
What? Obviously, your expertise then is in training people to be physically fitter. And I know we're making the argument that it's similar to business. Where on the physical training, what do you see as the biggest reasons why people don't finish the training plan? They just stop turning up. They turn up less often. What are the excuses people give themselves to get out of that? So I wonder if there's a similarity with business.
This is a good question. The problem is that motivation kind of gets in the way. Now, motivation's the spark. Discipline is what gets you to where you want to be. Now, discipline's different to motivation, because discipline's turning up when you don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's the workout you did on the day you didn't want to work out, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not skipping it no matter how you feel. Whereas motivation is, I feel great. Now, if we all trained when we felt great, none of us would be in shape. So
if you only trained when you felt like it,
yeah, because out of 7 days of a week, I personally might feel like training once, but I'll train 7 days, and it's not relying on motivation to get you to where you want to be.
And because we talked about passion and discipline as well, didn't we? And again, passionate, motivated, like their words about like someone like, they're excited to do it. Does that mean then that the discipline is a way to push through even when you're just not excited, there's no passion?
Yeah.
You just know it's the right thing to do.
So obviously going back to what we said and linking that in, when it comes to like what is it that stops people, or the barriers that cause failure in a fitness plan, it's the habits to set up from the start. So I always say in January, January, new year, new me, the new start.
Yeah.
If you look at how busy gyms are at the start of January compared to the start of February, there's a huge
dropout rate, I presume, is it? Yeah.
And it's so common in the fitness industry. And the reason for this is it gets to January and everyone is just trying to change the wheel on their full life, and like, right, I'm not eating meat ever again, and I'm never drinking again.
I'm deleting the pizza shop's number out my phone.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to train every day, and they might do that for 2-3 weeks, but at some point that difficulty comes in. Once that passion is starting to decline, so that passion causes motivation, right? That motivation goes one of two ways. You either create habits at the start, which then lead to discipline, so you implement practical lifestyle changes, or you do what most people do and kind of do that new year, new me, start right, I'm cutting everything out, I'm never eating a carb again, and then that at some point when it gets tough, that breaks. It might be that they've set too many goals.
Is it that people bite off more than, like, just too much change, too many?
Yeah, exactly.
Because the amount of people that go to the gym every day, obviously you said you work out every day, you kind of need to for your job. But your average person, you haven't got to go 7 days, have you? You might want them to go 7 days, but
absolutely not.
There must be pretty fit people out there who do 3 solid training sessions a week.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So why do people ever go every day? I'm going to go every day. Like, if you've never gone every day, you're never going to do, are you?
Yeah, it's because people want the end goal without the process. And that's another big link with business is instead of kind of trying to enjoy the fact that they're working on themselves, intrinsic motivation, they kind of just focus on that external factor of, right, I want a 6-pack, what do I need to do to get there? Right, I need to train every day, because they want the results as quick as possible, which is human nature. But where people get real results is where they focus on the enjoyment of actually pushing themselves. You feel like you've achieved something. Again, just like in business, is when you push your body outside of its norm in training, you're forcing these adaptations, but you're enjoying the fact that you pushed yourself outside of your norm.
The fact that you're stiff is part of what you're aiming for.
Yeah, and it's looking forward to. So it's actually enjoying the fact that you know that you haven't wanted to do it. You've done it, you've turned up, and then you get a bigger reward. You get a bigger mental reward after that. Whereas focusing on external factors would be someone who goes in the gym and then every day they're looking and checking their 6-pack. Do you know? And then they're getting a negative feedback.
Because that's also takes a long time, and your passion will wane probably long before you get that 6-pack water.
As long as it's miserable having the 6-pack anyway, but that's a different story.
I know.
You look at people with like 8-packs and you're just like, I bet you're really cold. I mean, we need body fat for insulation, is that, you know?
Well, that's my logic.
That's
Yeah.
The bulk.
Every January, I add a number for another pizza shop.
The winter bulk just all year round.
Yeah, solid. It's funny you talked about there what drives people then, the chasing it. Because there are people, and I've kind of been guilty of this. This is probably the same as why people have yo-yo diets. You know, like, oh, I'm going to get there. They get there, and achieving that like 5 stone off. They just set an arbitrary thing that doesn't really mean anything to them.
Yeah.
So then there's no incentive to stay there. Because does that make sense? Or?
Well, I know what you mean. But I would argue that it's more about the habits they've created. If you create healthy habits, so you're getting your calorie deficit right, and you're not overdoing it, so you're not craving.
You're not losing it too quick.
You're not losing it. Well, not even that, because depending on where you're at, say if you're 30 stone, you'll lose 5 stone quite quickly.
Because you need to shift something.
As soon as you start moving around. But so it's all relative. But where actually people, when it comes to the yo-yo diet, is that they've set up the wrong habits. Normally, people that yo-yo are people that do fad diets like keto, or they go on the kind of, I'm not going to mention any companies.
Well, we're going to say we'll stop there. We haven't been sued yet. But
they use these dieting companies, which basically are based on, their model is based on the yo-yo diet.
Also, right.
So they want you to yo-yo. So
we'll definitely not name any of them, but the idea is that you remember for life.
Yeah. And that's what it creates. So I would say it's for anyone that does yo-yo diet, it's more the habits they've created rather than what they've actually done. So if they've achieved their weight goal, then because they've restricted themselves that much, they tend to gorge after, because it's just like, I haven't had this for months, I've been craving this and that.
Yeah.
Relating it to boxing, and even myself, if I do a fight camp, like, it'll be 10 weeks of hell, and you'll drop your calories to ridiculous amounts because you've got to make a certain weight. As soon as you've made that weight and that fight's over, you're straight on the pizzas.
Eating for 4 days solid.
So it does create that, and that over restriction creates a kind of a tidal wave once you've got to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So I would blame it on the habits they set up.
So how do you go around creating good habits then? Because people probably lean towards an external diet company, fitness fad, ab machine, whatever, they'll do that because they think, well, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And this isn't an advertisement for your gym or your training, but I presume it's more about the daily things you tick off then. So when you say habits you form, in business, you're like, you'll check your email, check the inbox, open the post, do certain things, certain times. Yeah. Is there again, there must be similarities there.
Huge similarities.
To good practice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when it comes to, if when you use the ab machine, or if someone's going out and buying that, or they're getting on the keto diet, where have they got that from? Information. It's from advertisement. It's from what they've seen online. Probably
been sold, haven't they?
Yeah. So
literally.
Yeah. So if someone's getting the misinformation, then they'll go for the wrong thing. So it's about education. It's about knowing kind of what habits you should be creating before then deciding what habits you are going to create. Whereas a lot of people, they'll want the quick results, and they'll be just looking for anything that'll get them to where they want to be as quick as they can.
Because a bit like in business as well, so in business we during sessions with clients we'll say you've got to be careful about the things you measure, because the things you measure will become almost your goals. If you say to someone you've got to answer the phone fast, if they're on the phone and the other line rings, they'll hang up on the one they're on just to answer that fast. That's an extreme example, but you're answering the phone quick, but your customer service is terrible because you're hanging up on people.
Yeah.
So you've artificially met one result by failing another. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
so A&E will see everyone at 4 hours because they've got to, but they'll class seeing you as, well, we've we've chained to your bed.
Yeah.
Well, you haven't dealt with us, so you've just artificially met a target. Is there an element of that? Because you go, well, I'll get the ab machine, I'll sit with it and it'll nip us for hours. Yeah, but if you're not actually looking at your calories, what you eat, an ab machine, no matter how long it's on, it's never going to make you lose weight and be healthy, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And nothing's accidental in fitness or in business. But going back to what you said about the call centre, and then relating it to the motivation and habitual stuff, if that person was not focused on that external factor of answer that call quick, but they just enjoy the fact that they're going to be speaking to customers and they enjoy every part of what they're doing, that person will provide a better service for each customer. It's really interesting there, because if you could, as a business owner, say, well, we're going to measure our customer service by how many calls we answer, you should really say, well, how many calls end in a satisfactory way? Yeah, definitely.
Which is still with happy customers who were helped.
Yeah.
Not how many people you spoke to.
Yeah.
So you're trying to do the same thing, but if you just get it wrong, and is that what your fad diet, your expensive bit of kit is? That's like.
Yeah, so they would basically make the wrong decisions on the goals that they're setting, because they want to see that end goal before actually enjoying the process of getting there.
Yeah.
So we, like you say, using that January example, would be there's probably, I don't know what the figures are, but out of 10, from what I've seen, out of 10 people, you go to a Christmas party, for example, every single person in that party is saying, yeah, I'm going to get this, I'm going to do this and this.
This is my last bender.
Yeah. Right, it gets to January, maybe it's 2 weeks at last, but like you get the ones where they'll then start looking for a quicker fix, and they'll not see that result straight away, and then start looking for something that's going to be excel them in that. Like, you know, the waist trainer from years ago, people used to just walk around drinking pints wearing a waist trainer and think that was going to get them to where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
But in business there's no easy route, in fitness there's no easy route, so that's where it transfers over. So
how because again, in business people get swamped and think, well, there's too many things to fix, where the hell do we start? So you must have that in fitness. You'll get someone who's very immobile because their joints are sore, their muscles are weak, they might be huge, they might have an actual illness as well, and their motivation's lacking because they've got no confidence. Where do you start? Because we have this in business, and we're like, well, you can't fix 100 things tomorrow, pick one. Like, is there something where you kind of go?
So you start with the barriers. So you start with the immediate barriers. So what you said there, if someone came to me and they mentioned previous injuries, or they mentioned conditions they might have, you start with that, and you start with the main thing. You know, you start with what is actually stopping you here.
And is that because without solving that, it doesn't matter? You're never going to solve the small stuff.
Yeah, you're only as strong as your weakest link. You know?
Yeah.
So it might be that their motivation's low because they know that they can't do as much as what other people do, and
it's just like an embarrassment thing.
Yeah. Like, and a lot of people think that fitness is about. You see it a lot where it's, oh, what do you bench and stuff like that. Like, what is that? You know, like that the numbers that other people are doing, or the exercises, or the capabilities of others, shouldn't then restrict you in your own journey. And it's kind of, if you think about competition in business, you can get eaten alive if you start going down that route mentally.
Because you'll never be the biggest business, you'll never be the most efficient, you'll never be the most profitable. Like, someone is in all of these things, but you're unlikely to be. Yeah,
exactly. So if you go in and start just looking at the competition and kind of thinking, oh, I'll never get there, then that's only going to demotivate you. If you have the mindset of, again, relating it back to the gym, of I might not be able to do that, but I'm going to get as close to that as I possibly can, then you'll never fail. And the same with business, you know, you kind of look at your competition and think, yeah, but I might never get to what they've got, but I can put processes in place,
I can get closer,
and I'm going to try and get there.
Is there a thing, Joe, with this that you need to figure out what you're actually aiming for as well? Because if you say, well, I want a 6-pack, well, what are you actually going to get from a 6-pack? You know, whereas if you say, well, I've got a couple of kids, I'd like to be able to swing them round at the park on the weekend, well, we can work with that. Because that's then something worth having.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a 6-pack isn't worth having, but for no reason, it doesn't mean anything, does it?
Yeah.
So is that part of like where you'd start? It's like, what are you trying to get from this?
So definitely, and that's a really good example. So that would be more. So if you want a 6-pack, likelihood is you only want a 6-pack to impress other people, right? Now, if you want to be able to play with your kids better, that's so that you can do something for yourself that's going to make you and your family's life better.
Yeah.
So that there is your intrinsic motivation. If you're worrying about a 6-pack, I mean, like, that's not for yourself. Like, it's not. Speak to anyone that's ever had a 6-pack. You know, these bodybuilders when they go on show and stuff like that. Look at how miserable they are in their last couple of weeks. It's not all it's cracked up to be. So that would be the kind of external motivation of, right, okay, I want to go impressing someone, I want to go and impress an ex, or I want to get back in my ex, I want to look great, stuff like that. They work to a point, but they only.
It's not a long-term thing, is it?
No,
it's not going to keep you going, is it?
Yeah, because you get.
And unless you're in competition, which is a different thing. That's about being the best at it.
Yeah.
But most people aren't in a bodybuilding competition, are they?
Yeah, but again, these bodybuilders, speak to any of them, and they're happier when they're in the off season and they're not in the competition mode.
Right.
So it's when you put them external factors in, boxing again. I was speaking to a lad in the gym who's got his first fight coming up, and he's one of the most confident lads I know, and he's a really good boxer. He's been ready to fight for years. He's just plucked up the courage to do it. And he was saying, he was like, mate, I'm starting to dread coming in for sessions. I'm starting to dread sparring. And he's loved it for years.
And yet he's loved the journey. Yeah. He's loved the training.
Loved it, and then now he's in a fight camp and he's a few weeks away from his fight. He's starting to really hate it. So that's because his motivation flipped from just enjoying it and just loving being there, challenging himself, to now having that end goal of like, right, I need to win this fight. That's an external motivational factor. Whereas when you're just going in and enjoying it, you tend to, like, I box better when I'm out of fight camp. Like, obviously, you're not then pushing yourself to. There's less pressure in your head than when you're not in a fight camp. But I feel like I box more confidently when I'm out of camp.
It's interesting though, because in business, you say to people to set smart goals. You got to be able to see what it is, specific, measurable, all those things. In a boxing fight feels like it would be that. Well, we know the opponent that we're going to try and beat. You would think that would give people more focus.
It does to a point.
But I suppose it only does if you enjoy that bit of that process.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be setting them goals if you didn't have that intrinsic motivation in the first place. If you weren't enjoying going in for sessions, you wouldn't start competitively fighting.
Yeah.
And I think
because what's interesting as well is you can set people all the goals you want in business, but if they don't enjoy what they're doing, you're much less likely to get them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like what you're saying about the guy boxing there. It's like, well, now he's got a fixed thing he has to do. It's took the fun off it a little bit.
If you said to yourself, going to like a networking event or something like that, and you said to yourself, oh, can't really be bothered with this, like, I'm gonna go and I'll turn up, I'll show my face, compared to being buzzing about what you do.
Who am I going to meet today?
Thing that you've got going on in your business, and going in being really passionate. Which one would you then be more likely to gain work from?
Yeah,
It's the same in fitness. Do you know, if you're focused on that one defining factor and that's the only thing that's keeping you there, likelihood is you won't be there for long.
Yeah.
And going back to how do people succeed or fail in fitness is how long they stick it out. If you're getting everything right, your calories are bang on, your training's bang on, you're getting a lot of activity in, then it will work. But it might not then it might not then be within the time frame that you want, which is then demotivating.
Yeah.
So it's just like in business. If you like, sometimes for my own business, I wake up excited for what the day will bring, and just like excited to be going in, and challenge myself and see what you know, what deals I can make, or like you know, how many members I can get over the line, and I get that excitement, that fire in my belly every morning. I have the same when I train, and I think that a lot of that excitement comes from the original passion I had for training.
So what about people who would just say, well, you're just lucky that you like your job?
Yeah, but then my job came from a passion that I developed when I was in my teens.
So would you argue, well, actually, I've forged my life around the thing I like doing?
Yeah.
It's not that it's lucky I like my job. I've directed my life into doing the thing that I like doing. So it's not by chance, is it?
Yeah, I've always said, actually my slogan, if I was going to choose one, would be do what you love and the money will follow. Do what you love.
Unless you love sitting watching the telly eating popcorn, mind you, I think you'll struggle.
I'm sure there's a business in that. But
well, actually, that's Gogglebox, isn't it? I've never watched it,
exactly.
but that's Gogglebox. Yeah.
Look at your competition, but yeah, and then in a training perspective, do what you love, and the six pack will follow. So that's kind of where the two transfer over.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of thinking six pack, how do I get a six pack? Go
find the passion first, and then you will succeed.
Joe, can we talk a little bit about your business then? Because obviously we've talked about what drives you, why you do it, and those types of things. You said 4.5 years. Well, anyone who's not been under a rock will know that 3 years ago the world went a bit nuts, and we all had to stay in the house. Right. So you were what, a year and a half into business in an industry that actually, if we were all healthier, we would have survived better. But we'll not get into the politics of it all. You obviously had to close. How was that as a gym owner then?
So I adapted pretty quickly. I got wind that this was all going on, and I kind of got wind that we were going to go into lockdown.
Oh, you got like a hotline or something, have you?
Just like I started looking at the trends,
like reading the science.
This is going to blow up here.
Because I think before we went in, there'd been lockdowns in probably Italy in certain cities.
It started to filter through into Europe, and I remember 2 days before we actually got announced that we were getting locked down, I just got all my clients in contracts to say, because basically I needed to cover myself. I wanted a gym at the end of it, and I knew that the gym was going to make no money, but I separate my two businesses, my PT and the gym. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to have to fund the gym through my PT, so I can't lose any clients, I can't lose any business here. So I got them all in contracts. I basically said, if we can't make the gym, if you can't be in for whatever reason, not obviously mentioning COVID specifically, just for any reason, we do FaceTime sessions.
Right.
So, and
it was just that simple. Yeah.
And then I was doing...
Because of course everyone had Wi-Fi in the house. Well, most people had Wi-Fi in the house, and
I was doing then just my normal 45 hours, 50 hours of PT per week, just
without any travel.
Aye, in my boxers. Just say from the waist up. But I actually had a funny story. I had a client.
Did he get any feedback on that then, or did most people kind of appreciate the fact that you were still doing it?
Do you know what it was? People actually saw such value in that, because there wasn't a lot going on. People didn't have things to wake up for. At least then, if they had something booked in with me, they had that to look forward to throughout the day. And then you get the other benefits.
Or dread.
Well, dread at the time. Aye.
Then feel better.
Yeah.
That's it. It's sinking in.
Yeah. So then you get the other benefits of, it's proven to be the best thing for your mental health is exercise. Yeah. So they were I'd seen some horror stories in lockdown, but because of the way I was doing things, there was no one that was associated with me had struggled through any part of lockdown. And I'm not saying it was me that's caused that, but it causes that spark to just be better within yourself. So that was that's how I got through lockdown.
So it's interesting that you've already touched on a couple of things. You've already said, so keep an eye on what's coming, try to predict it if you can, but then also be quick on your feet. Because if something, when it happens, you have to be ready to go.
Yeah, put a process in place.
Yeah,
to counteract potential barriers or problems.
Because also, if you're an in-person PT who people are paying you when they saw you and they're giving you cash, well, again, that would be another barrier you'd have to solve. So I presume you were like, right, well, it's bank transfer or it's direct debit or what. Like, you got to make it as easy as possible to be flexible, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I sometimes think like diamonds are created under pressure. So that couple of days, I came up with the idea of just, right, I'm going to try and obviously I wasn't forcing them to sign the contract, I was just but like,
you sounded quite ruthless.
Yeah,
You went, I was lucky I gypped them just before.
But it was a funny sort of thing at the time, because it made my business better, like forever, because it made me someone that was kind of like willy-nilly, kind of like, don't worry, like, pay as when you want sort of thing, and all right, you haven't made a session, that's fine, like stuff like that. Them contracts actually made it more of a business than a job.
Yes.
And it kind of changed things.
I presume it also gave you the certainty that you needed, that the money was going to come in to pay the bills, and
and then when you've got that sort of security, you
and more discipline. Ironically, it created a discipline in a business that you might not have. You didn't need to have had. But all of a sudden you had no option but to have it.
And it just gives us a bit more structure. It gives a bit more kind of confidence to go forward. Is putting them contracts in place. So it was
we were expecting more resistance from people when you were kind of asking them, or did they not really?
I think you've got to back yourself. So people do value my service, and obviously even then I'd done it for a long time, so I was quite confident in what I was doing. There was a bit. It wasn't resistance. It was just more like, right, well, this is weird. You're putting a contract in front of my face, kind of like.
So I presume in the world of PTs, it's just you've got a 6 o'clock on Tuesday appointment. You turn up. It's all probably quite informal, or was.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
I think that's what it did.
Can I do 8 o'clock instead? Yeah, no worries.
And it's like putting an agreement there with someone didn't just make it a better business for me. It actually made it better for the client, and people were starting to see that, because they knew.
I was just going to say, you're both accountable for each other then, aren't you? You've got accountabilities and responsibilities both ways. It's not just me looking after you. You've got to look after me. We're providing a service to each other here.
Yeah. So for what I found, it made it. It turned it from a service which is or a hobby, something which is a hobby for people, and I like training, to something that was an investment.
Yeah.
It turned that kind of relaxed nature to, right, now I'm locked in for this certain amount of time. I was doing 3, 6 or 12-month contracts. Now I'm locked in for however long I'm locked in for. I need to make the most of this. I need to get my money on my investment, a return on my investment.
Yeah.
So it went from being something that was kind of take or leave to a necessity for people, and then obviously it benefited us like after lockdown as well.
How many people went straight back to the old way versus how many preferred the new way?
It was a hybrid.
Because we've seen this, people were desperate to get back in the office. Some people would happily never come back in again.
It was a hybrid. I was giving people the choice, because obviously at the time we still had restrictions when we were like kind of open and closing type.
Yeah.
But I was giving people the choice of, right, look, you're booked in the diary for this time. If you're comfortable coming in the gym, come in the gym. We've got measures in place. We've got all the kind of COVID laws in place and stuff. But then if you're still not comfortable coming out of the house,
don't worry.
Do it on FaceTime. And I was doing FaceTime sessions then from the gym. And then someone the next client might come in, and it was it was a bit of a hybrid on kind of both of them. And then what that did was, say after lockdown, and when we were back to normal completely, say for example, a barrier for someone would be childcare. I can't get someone to look after the bed, so I can't come into the gym. All right, no bother. FaceTime. So then that person is getting a better service because
Yeah.
there's more availability there's more flexibility for certain circumstances. So if someone's kind of not well to the point where they don't really want to leave the house, but actually they feel like a little bit of exercise might help them.
Yeah.
There you go. Or if they're injured, I can FaceTime them and say, look, as you rest, and we'll go through some recovery stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a huge thing, kind of like COVID for me was probably the biggest learning curve and the biggest help to my business.
And yet it could have been the thing that ended your business.
Yeah, and you've seen it. We've all seen cases of that.
Seen some, yeah. What one obvious connection with training and business that we haven't touched on, mind you, is having someone who does hold you accountable. And obviously, pardon me, I could have a chart on my wall that tells us to do 20 squats, 14 whatever's, but if I know that someone's going to stand over me, make sure I do them right, count them right, get the right form, do it, I'm going to get a lot more from that, aren't I?
Yeah.
And it's funny because we obviously see people that kind of go, well, I know everything you've just told us, like, yeah, but you're still not doing it. It's like, you might know it, but you haven't done it. And we're quite open that a lot of the benefit of having a business coach is that you're going to have to turn up in a week and say, yeah, I haven't done any of that.
Yeah, massively.
And it just, people go, well, shit, I better get some of that stuff done then.
Yeah, and that's something that is kind of unspoken of in the business world is that actually look for help. I've started doing that recently and my business is booming.
Yeah, because you're not alone, are you? Yeah, you don't have to be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of being an entrepreneur as well is more, it's based on I can do this. You've got to have that confidence to do it. But
you're the boss after all.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know the answer, nobody knows the answer.
Yeah, and then who do you go to when you don't know the answer?
Yeah.
So it is it's really similar being a personal trainer to what it would be a business coach.
But as well as that accountability thing, there's then also getting the right form. You've told me to, put my hips out, bend, feels uncomfortable, but then when you know you're doing it right, it's better. In business, it's the same. It's like, you're doing that, it needs to be slightly different and you'll see a better result. So it's not just the accountability, it's someone who actually knows what they're doing as well. Yeah. Someone who's seen it before, seen that mistake being made and corrects the mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we were chatting about what we might talk about, we never even thought about that, but no. I think that accountability piece is really an interesting...
But it also crosses over back to what we were originally talking about is when you're, them small changes make the biggest change overall. So if you've got someone then telling you in business or in training, if you just change that slightly, or you can add this in or take that out and actually do this instead, and just them little tiny things, them little lifestyle changes from a fitness perspective, make all the difference.
Yeah.
Because like I said, success or failure in a fitness plan is how long you stick it out. Right, if you have certain changes which make you stick it out longer, because you're not feeling like you're on a diet, or you're not crash dieting, or you're not starving, you're allowed to go out with your friends, and we teach people how to manage going out and eating, tracking their food and stuff, and how to manage that. All them little things add to the adherence side of it. Just like in business, if you can make these little changes to make your life easier, then you're more likely to stick it out for longer.
But also you must see people who will turn up every time. They've almost got the discipline, but they're just not doing it right, and they will eventually just get frustrated by the lack of performance and results. So in business, you have people who are like zombies, business owners. They just turn up and do the same thing forever because they can't see a way out. And I suppose, again, that's another link to why you'd have a coach, someone can go, just that one little change and you'll start to see a result. Yeah. And as soon as you see the result, you're more likely to stick with it and be more disciplined on it.
And that's it, is asking for help. It's more of a pride thing, to be honest, because you see it in training all the time. It was
quite hard when you first asked me to help you train, I know that.
I mentioned that.
I know what you mean though.
Train the fork.
You hold it with two hands, you can get more food on. The classic bloke thing is, blokes don't ask other blokes for help.
It's even
You've seen me in some pretty uncomfortable, sweaty positions, gym-wise.
Didn't tell them that.
Where you know, if it'd be quite easy for me to be ashamed of that, whereas, you know, you've got to have that trust, haven't you? You can like.
Yeah, ego is the biggest blocker of adaptation in training and in business. Is that if your ego's getting in the way, so like you get certain people that will come into gym, and using this as an example, is like they normally come in wearing some sort of like fun run top or something, and they've trained or they've done fitness classes for years, and and they're just stuck in their ways, and they'll question what I'm telling them, like, oh, but I've been told it's this way, and you're just like, well, yeah, but like I'm telling you I'm personalising how it should work for you, not just how you generalise, and
because your body's different, your style, your gait, everything's different.
And a lot of the time, that category of person doesn't like to be told.
There's a great book actually.
It's slightly wrong even, and that's their ego that's getting in the way.
Yeah, there's a great book called Ego is the Enemy. We'll check it, but I think it's Ryan Holiday, James. It's a really good book. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Well, you're never going to ask for help, are you? And unfortunately, they also don't see that what they're doing isn't working. They're like blind to their own failures, and their ego is so big that they won't ask for help. And it's such a barrier. And
then getting offended when things drop off and they haven't changed anything.
You also then have to look for other people to blame and other reasons why.
Yeah.
Because if you're a massive ego, but it's still not actually working, because you know if you're not driving a Ferrari working 2 days a week, it's self-evident. But yet if that's what you're telling everyone you're doing, and the disconnected, that can only work if you then blame other reasons. You go like, oh no, I'm doing everything right. It's I just had the wrong trainers this week, or it's your machine wasn't working, or
blaming the trainer.
It's something else.
You see it so often where it's like, I've told clients not to tell people that, or not to just even mention that they've trained, and they get so offended by that. And I'm like, well, you haven't done anything I've told you to do. You know, you've been going out 4 nights a week. You've been.
Oh, so you're like don't tell people I'm training you. I don't want to be associated.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you haven't listened to a word I've said. Do not say, oh well, I trained with Joe and didn't get any results in 3 months. I bet you did 1 session a month for 3 months, and you ate takeaways every day. But they're quite happy to then blame the person that's telling them the right
Joe's
thing to
no
do.
Good.
So yeah, it's like that sort of poor workman blames their tools.
Yeah.
And I think in business, you've got to tell yourself, you've got to question yourself first before you question anyone else.
Yeah. What's the we normally finish, Joe, on, I suppose there's 2 questions very quickly. First one is what's next then? So obviously you've got this hybrid thing. What are you doing in business to kind of to move on? Are you?
I've just opened up to the public, so it's been a private facility for the length of time I've had it. We've been doing just personal training, group sessions, boot camps, boxing, but now I've just renovated the place and made it more approachable, so I'm now taking on public members,
right?
Which is huge for me. And I've created an online training portal where I'm hoping to grow that hugely as well. And it's just basically like essentially people having a PT on their phone.
Do you think you ever would have done that had those FaceTime sessions during lockdown not happened? Because you're not unique in that, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but do you think something that is so obviously an in-person, face-to-face thing?
Yeah, well, it opened up a new market.
Do you think it ever would have? Do you think we would have got there eventually, or do you think you wouldn't have even entertained it?
Well, it was so strange for people at first, but then people got accustomed to that as training at home, and it opened up a new market in the fitness industry, which when I started, I remember doing my first diet plan on paper and pen.
Yeah.
So it's like the way it's progressed through now, there's ample opportunity to do really well in the fitness industry.
The reason I mention it is obviously I'm happy for you to tell people what you're up to, but also, we during lockdown, and I've used food quite a few times in this example, we've seen, you know, shops who were selling food up from their premises who never did takeaway, never did anything. Lockdown, they then didn't adapt at all, and they really like they've either failed or they've just never recovered.
Yeah.
Whereas other people who also did food from premises who never had takeaway anything, you know, we've got one business who opened 2 of their premises during lockdown. It's like, it's nuts. Why would that ever work? And I think part of that, the ego, letting yourself off. You know, me and Jack have talked in the past about, you know, the saboteurs, the little voices that tell you not to bother, don't bother, you're a waster, you'll never do that, what was their fault. It's quite funny because there are so obviously examples where things never should have worked, but they just do. And it's so easy to think, well, what am I supposed to do? I've never done takeaway. Well, just start tomorrow then. We can't open. Well, luckily you can do FaceTime. Exactly. Yeah, it's just.
And that's it. And I always find in times of struggle, there's always opportunity. So that, like, you know, when we're in a recession and the stocks are down, there's an opportunity on the stock market to buy in for when that boom happens. And it works in every perspective. So it works in training.
The world balances out, doesn't it? Yeah. Everything balances. If something's going down, something's going up.
Yeah.
You've just got to make sure you're not stuck on the down, haven't you?
So and it's capitalising on that and it's having the mindset of this is why ego's a good thing as well, which I was saying it as a negative thing before. But if your ego's good,
you've got to believe in it. You said believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself.
No, that's not how it is. Back yourself.
Back yourself.
So you got to back you, which I don't think is the same as ego, by the way.
Yeah, but I think you've got to have a certain mindset where you think you can take on the world, right? And
is that not just confidence though? You got to be confident in yourself. Yeah, because there's a point where too much is then like
and ego like would get in the way, and it's not being overconfident.
Yeah,
but there's you know, if you tell yourself you'll never fail, you never will.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what the mindset you've got to have through training, business, and life in general.
What so the final question then is what are the things that just everyone's getting wrong in business then? And I'm an expert on business, so you can say it on training if you want, but what is the thing that if someone fails you go, well, I knew it would be that?
Well, welcome failure as a learning opportunity. And that's what people don't. They see failure as embarrassment, or that they've let themselves down, stuff like that. Like, be open to failure so that you can then take the opportunity to adapt.
I like it. Thank you very much, Joe.
You're good.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode. Slightly different approach, but again, there's so many similarities there. It's crazy. That was Joe from Body Hacks. Pop and see him around the corner from us in the office, or I'm sure you'll find him online. We'll link to Joe and you can see more next time if you come back.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.